Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Salutations. Welcome to the bonus show. David, how is your cell phone service in the New York City subways? Do you get good service?
I was just talking to someone about this. I mean, as is the case with just about every subway that's underground, you get no service in the actual tubes. There are, I don't know if it's 60 or 80 stations now that have free Wi-Fi. So at least when you're in the station, you can have access to the internet. But of course, that doesn't help when it comes to text messages or phone calls. But no, I've been talking for a while about how if you have hundreds of thousands of people in the subways at any given time in New York City, it would be really useful in terms of public safety to be able to have those people have phone service, because who knows what might be happening above ground when you're down there.
All right. Well, this is a project that New York City is working on. It's basically a project to try and get cell phone service to all of those people while they are underground in the subway system. And I guess there is one central location called the Base Station Hotel. This is all very high tech. There's an elevator that opens up to a caged-in entrance that you need a fingerprint. There's a fingerprint scanner to get in there. And this Base Station Hotel is one of 3 pieces that make up the network that I guess just gets you service. So New York City supplies the building, but the individual carriers need to fill these stations with all of their own equipment in order to get cell phone service to people. And it's really high tech. It's really impressive. There's a long article here about it, about all the inner workings and the technological, the tech pieces that make this happen. A lot of fiber optic stuff, of course, power, backup power, and you name it. And I guess basically there are about 7 phases to this deployment. Transit Wireless is in the middle of phase 2. They've built 47 stations so far and should be finished with phase 7 by 2017 with a total of 278 stations. So you're telling me that right now you don't have any service when you're in the subway stations?
No. I mean, that's the case in every subway system for the most part. Unless, sometimes the subway itself will have Wi-Fi. But in terms of wireless service, if you're underground, then you don't have service, yeah.
Okay, but this is already happening in New York. So you've never noticed having actual cell phone service, not Wi-Fi.
I've noticed that sometimes when I am in or near the platform in parts of the city that aren't as far underground, where the subways aren't as far underground, I may have some service. But the thing is, I'm not really looking at my phone when I'm in the subway. Like, I usually have a book with me, or I'm like listening to a podcast or something, but I don't really check. So I'll pay more attention, I guess, from now on.
All right. Well, they're saying that service in the tunnels is a long way off, and that is not something they're focused on right now. But I guess by 2017, you should have service pretty much throughout the subway system if you are on one of those major carriers. My question is, what happens if there's another flood? I think that I don't think New York really has a way to deal with that at the moment.
What you mean? But that's a separate thing, though, right? I mean, you're saying if there's another hurricane, which we would know about days in advance.
Sure, you know about it days in advance, but I mean, I'm talking about these rooms getting, flooded.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Right. Yeah. No, I wonder what they're doing as far. I mean, the thing is,
New York doesn't take the hit if that happens. Like I said, the carriers are all providing this equipment.
Yeah. And most of New York City was not underwater. It was the lower part of Manhattan, and then it was the lower part of Brooklyn, and there were a couple of other areas. But for the most part, it was not flooded. Yeah.
But anyway, I guess maybe it doesn't make sense to think about those things because it happens so rarely. But I don't know. It could happen. But anyway, that's what's happening in New York with cell phones. It's something that's happening. It's interesting, to say the least. I guess people in the subways need cell phone service. Maybe Wi-Fi isn't good enough. I have a story here about a child endangerment case, and I'm going to ask people if they agree with it. The father of an 8-year-old Ohio boy will appear in court after his son skipped church to go play. So basically, this is what happened. Jeffrey K. Williamson Jr. is the name of the man. He's 31, and he thought his son had just boarded a bus, along with the other children sent by Woodville Baptist Church. But I guess at the last minute, the boy decided to go play on his own. His friends went on the bus, and he went to a nearby dollar store. The clerk at the store called the police because there was this unaccompanied child. And I guess this was only about 4 blocks away. So he came and picked up his kid. The father is being charged with child endangerment because he did not witness. He walked away and assumed that his kid got on the bus. The kid didn't get on the bus and took off. So I suppose if he just stayed and watched his kid get on the bus, this wouldn't happen. Should he be charged with this? I mean, do you know, the kid's 8 years old. What's the right call here?
I do not know. I really do not know. I mean, on the one hand, yes, the father could have stayed slightly longer. On the other hand, the kid has free will, but is still under the custody of the parents. I really am not sure how I feel about this. What have you been reading comments online about what people think?
I have not, no. But I don't know. It's a weird one. I'm torn on this. On the one hand, I'm thinking, obviously, yes, you sit there and you watch your kid get on the bus. On the other hand, you know, did our parents stand at the bus stop and wait for us to get on the bus when we were, when we were taking the bus? No.
I mean, I wasn't taking the bus when I was 8. That's another thing. I didn't have a bus until middle school, at which point I was 12. And certainly I could have disappeared. Would that have been child endangerment? No. I mean, at 12, it certainly wouldn't have. At 8, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But also the kid was with other kids and then, left the other kids. So it's not like he was completely alone to start with. I don't know. Weird story. The dad was basically arrested right in front of his kid. The kid started crying. It was a whole scene, but let us know if you agree with that one.
But so, Lewis, unlike with the story of the woman trying to save the ducks, you're not calling for 10 years in prison for this guy.
No, David, not at all. Nobody died here. I don't think this guy should get any jail time. But this should be an eye-opener for him, certainly. Don't assume your kid gets on the bus. Real estate, David. I'm sure you've heard stories about people, real estate, landowners, building owners, finding things that their tenants left behind.
Yeah.
Interesting things like that. But in Japan, an elderly woman bought a building in Japan, and she discovered that basically on 2 floors of this building was a perfectly preserved 90s arcade. And looking at the pictures here, it is very dated, but also very foreign. A lot of these machines, we never had arcade machines that looked like these. And they're kind of all ones where you kind of sit down. But it essentially is like, this article describes it as like a time capsule. And there's 55 completely operational arcade consoles. And also just a pile of random crap that I guess was for repairs and dismantled consoles. There was Donkey Kong, Tetris, Street Fighter, all of the good stuff. But pretty cool find, right?
Yeah, this reminds me of, there were recently some pictures published of an apartment that has essentially not been touched since the 1930s or something like that. And just how incredible it is. A time capsule when you step into it. This is a little different. It's a video game time capsule of sorts. But when it comes to the drapes, the consumer goods items that were still in boxes, just incredible stuff like that. And a lot of times this happens when someone dies, and not that they're not found for a while, but that the place is left to someone but then not touched for whatever reason. Nobody goes in there, and then it sits and sits and sits, and these basically effective time capsules develop. It's pretty interesting stuff. I would love to see pictures of this place.
Yeah. I guess the woman was not interested in the arcade, and her granddaughter's boyfriend said he's shipping a bunch of the equipment to the United States. I guess they're going to try and sell all of these consoles, which is unfortunate because I think if you were to open this up as an arcade and just, you would essentially have this, is it vintage? You say like 90s is vintage at this point?
I don't know. I mean, it's hard. I don't know. I would call it vintage. There's this place in Brooklyn called the Barcade that has 90s games. And I don't know that the term vintage is ever used. The term hipster is definitely used with regard to this place.
Well, there's certainly plenty of arcades like that here. There's a focus on, the old consoles, the old machines. But yeah, anyway, it's cool to see. It's cool to see these old ones. I remember when I was I think it was Redondo Beach in California, there was this big arcade that had some really, really old games. And I think it even had an original Pong, which was, felt like you were looking at a dinosaur.
The other day, I went to the Museum of Modern Art here in New York City, and they have a section right now that is a video game section, essentially. They have Pong, which you can play. They have a few different things. They're not consoles. They're kind of more artistically set up installations, versions of these games, and it's really, really interesting.
That would be interesting.
Fridays, it's free, by the way, for people who live in New York City. If you want to go to MoMA, free on Fridays from 4 to 8 or something like that.
Interesting. I would like to see that exhibit. I will not be able to make it, though, will I, David?
I believe probably not, no.
No. All right. Well, that's what I got for today's bonus show. Fascinating stuff. I love arcades.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.